And now we'll continue our interview with Mrs. Kontos, and she will tell us something about her background and her family and what led up to her coming to the United States. Okay.
My family, on my father's side, my father was born in Piraeus, Greece, and my grandmother, his mother, came from Constantinople, Istanbul, and they had moved to Chios. And then my papu, his father, my father's father, he was from Ios. My mom, but they moved to Piraeus, and that's where the whole family grew up. Now my father was one of four boys. He was the fourth, and he was the baby, and then there were three sisters. My grandmother married my grandfather, who was from Ios, when she was 13 years old, because her father, she lost her mom, her mother died, and her father was going to marry, and they didn't want, the side of her mother's family didn't want her to have a stepmother and being abused those days, you know. And so they married her off to my grandfather, who was like 17, so she was 13, she was 17. She had 16 births and miscarriages. She had finished at her age, 13 years old. At those years, my father would have been born 1904. My grandmother gave birth to my father when she was 42 years old. So my grandmother would have been, 1904. She was 42 when she gave birth, so she would have been like 150 years old now, almost. Yeah, close to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So she had finished Scholarchio. My grandfather was illiterate.
Yeah.
Completely. He couldn't even write his name. And my grandmother at 13, she got married. She raised the 4 sons and the 3 daughters. She had one son. The one son became a CPA. The other son became a lawyer and became an admiral too. And my father was an engineer. They lost one brother from illness, and then the one daughter became a teacher. So from a 13-year-old woman, you had 5 people that they were educated. And she used to from the factory, let's say, she used to take pieces like pants and stuff and take them home and sew them in order to make a living for her family. My grandfather was a carpenter, but not, the man, like I said, he was not educated, and he was not, I don't think he was as bright as grandma was, but grandmother took care of the whole family, just unbelievable. And now on my mother's side, that was my father's side. On my mother's side, they come from the island of Euboea, and they're from Charistos, that it is in the point, the far south point of Evia. I spend a lot of time, I have great memories, more with, I don't have, because my father was 42, my grandmother was 42 when she gave birth to my dad. I don't remember my grandmother very low, and my grandfather I never met on my father's side, but my mother's side of the family, we spent a lot of times together, and especially when I lost my dad when I was 80 years old, and it was an accident, and my grandfather always had us come to the island, and also he was a general merchant, and he also had a summer home in the Kalivia, they used to call the Chorio, the village, and we used to go and spend a lot of time there. So I have great memories of that part of my, area. My grandmother was also from Evia, so both my grandfather and my grandmother on both of my mother's side, they were both from Evia. My grandfather had finished, on my mother's side, had finished high school. So that's, you know, a big account, I mean, for those days, for somebody to, and he, in fact, the Lambropoulos, you know, in Athens, he had an opportunity to buy that years ago, and he turned down and he went to Karisto. And, but he was successful and he raised a nice family and everything. So now the reason I came to, do you have any other questions about that?
How did your parents meet?
Oh, it was very interesting. My father, like I said, he was the first engineer in the Merchant Marines, and he used to travel, you know. And my mother used to come from Karisto and visit her sister who was living in Piraeus at the time. And my father saw my mom. He had just broken up with the lady that he was going with for a long time, but she had, when my father was away on his trip, she had other friends with her. So he realized that he caught her, you know, with somebody else, and he dropped the relationship. So then he saw my mom. My mom was going to the dentist in Piraeus. And then it was a high life. It was birraria. I don't know, I wouldn't call it a bar, but it was like a, you could have appetizers and beer there and coffee. And high life, they used to call it, in the square in Piraeus, and also on the top of it, it was the high life cinema. And he was owner, my uncle, of the high life birraria. So my father followed my mom. He never stopped her. He never said anything to her, but he wanted to see what kind of a woman she was. So he would just follow her, and my mother was very blonde at the time, blue eye, and so after he followed her, he saw that she was going, you know, to the dentist. Then he went to my uncle's and he says, you know, there's a blonde woman, a blonde girl. She was like 22, I think, and I really like, you know, her looks, and I like her, and I would like to meet her. Do you know who she is? And my uncle started laughing, and he says, it's my sister-in-law. Now my uncle used to take friends of his and go to the island, to his parents-in-law, and go for hunting a lot. So it was not unusual for him to bring one or two male friends and go hunting, to, you know, and my grandpa always, you know, had his arms open for them. So my father told him that he's very interested, and he says, can you talk to your father-in-law? Of course, those days you didn't talk to the girl, you know. So he says, of course I will. And my uncle also knew of my father's family. It was a prominent family in Piraeus. So he said, yeah, no problem. So he talked to my papu, and my papu says, great, you know, I think that's wonderful for Vasiliki. My mom was always a very good person. And so they went, but he went as a friend. And then they left. Then, I don't know, a couple of weeks after, they talked with my papu, and my papu says, okay, he says, I want to come and ask, you know, to marry her. And my papu says, okay, you know, you come and we'll talk, and, you know, we'll talk to Vasiliki and everything. So they went. My mother was with the girls upstairs embroidering. And she didn't know that my father was coming with my uncle, and my yaya, she knew. And she says, Vasilikula, o Christos είναι εδώ, Christos is here, with his friend John. And my mother says, you know, why he's bringing all these people all the time here, you know, because she didn't have no idea. And she had those, like, clippers that they used to wear to make the waves, you know, on her hair, but she was with the girls. So the girls, they said, you know, take the clippers off from your hair. So she started, you know, they were upstairs on the second floor where they were, you know, the sala was, and they were embroidering. So she started running downstairs. She goes downstairs, and my papu says, you know, bring the glikabano, you know, with the liquor and everything. So she went in, she prepared everything, and she, you know, went. And she started giving to everybody something, you know, to... So then my uncle, he lifts up his little, you know, liquor glass, and he says, girls, to yours too, the best of luck to the new couple. My mother, you know, just went crazy. I mean, she didn't know what was happening. So then my father, who was a very good man, he said, wait a minute. he says, this is not the way to do it. He says, let's talk it over. Because first of all, my profession, it's not a profession that everybody loves. And I want to express and explain to Vasiliki what, it's all about. So they talked. My mother got very upset. She started crying and she ran to the other room. So my father followed her. You haven't heard all these stories, Michael. My father, have you? Yeah. My father followed her and he said to her, I came as a friend and I'm going to live as a friend. And my mother says when he started talking to her, something, she says, this is a good man. My mother only has lived with my dad 9 years. She talks about my father. My father is dead now about over 50 years, okay? When she talks about my dad, it is like my dad is still living or my dad died yesterday. She's still in love with him. So it was a beautiful thing, and he fell in love with her. She didn't know him, but they got married and they have had 9 wonderful years.
So how long after that they got married? Like right away?
Oh, in less than a year.
Oh.
Well, those days they didn't have long engagements.
But my mother-in-law stayed a widow and raised the kids through World War II and all the problems of trying to feed and raise
She's been a
your
wonderful,
children.
wonderful mother.
And how many kids were in your family?
Me and my brother.
Just
Oh, okay.
her
Yeah.
and
Okay.
Costa.
Yeah, and I brought my brother and he went to school here, the university. I mean, things they couldn't do. I helped him out to bring him to this country, and he went and he got his chemistry degree, and now he's in commercial real estate.
So what was it like growing up in Greece?
It was wonderful. My mother made our life. I mean, even at things that were difficult, I didn't feel that I was underprivileged in any way because also we had a lot of help from my grandfather.
Did you live with your grandparents?
No,
or-
no, we were on our own. Yes, and that was the most beautiful thing because my father's family loved my mom like almost better than her sisters. She was very close with my. They were very close with my mom. And they still, I mean, like my first cousins on my father's side, it's like my mom is their blood and not, so she's very close to them and with a lot of respect. And the big joke is, she is my close generation, but she used to write all the time. She was my little secretary and she kept in touch with them. And her spelling and everything was really always bad. And the people on my father's side, they're very highly educated, like I was saying, but they loved every bit of it, In fact, the big joke was before, when they started changing the spelling in Greek, the tonus and everything, they said Thea Vasiliki was ahead of her time, years ago, when she simplified things, Yeah. So,
Oh, okay. So after your dad died, did things change a lot in the household, or were you?
they did, but see, I was 8 years old, so I couldn't compare the before with after. We had some difficult times. I remember that my mother used to go and take her syntaxi, her pension, because my father didn't supposed to get a pension. My mom didn't supposed to get a pension because he was only 41 years old. So he hadn't put enough years, but because it was an accident on the boat, they killed him. Because it was an accident on the boat, they were able to get her a pension. So I remember that I used to budget things with her, and I wish she had them someplace. I don't know if she still has them, but I wish I had kept them myself. But I used to budget, what we'll do this week. And even put down if we're going to go to the movie theater or whatever, it was our expenses. I was the oldest. My brother was 2.5 years younger than me. So, and I had, like I said, I had my friends, I had, more or less everything that I wanted to as far as I was concerned, I'm sure, maybe now the kids, they have more needs or they are looking for more things, but I was happy with what we had.
Sure.
I miss my father a lot growing up. That was a big void, and still now, and sometimes I tell Michael, even now, I feel that I was deprived. Yeah, very much so. I really feel so. And when I was growing up, I would see friends of mine that they would be out, waiting to take the bus or something, and their dad, you know, a gazelle or, you know, holding, and that was a void in my life. The day that I got married, I knew that my mother, eventually she would come close to me. I was going to bring her. I didn't know what was going to happen, you know, the way things that worked out with Michael going overseas. But I didn't cry for my mom being away, and I didn't miss that. But I missed not having my father there.
At your
The day
wedding.
of the wedding, yeah, yeah.
It's interesting, I found so often when parents pass away that you hear just what Eva said. You miss your father more than your mother. If your mother dies or precedes your father in death, yeah, the mother raised you, the maternal bond is there, but somehow or another people miss the father more. At least I have found it to be true.
No, it's your situation, honeymoon, because you have a special dad.
Yeah, but you said yourself just a minute ago you missed your father.
But I mean, if I lost my mother, I think the mother would have made a big void in my life.
Okay.
Because a mother is it fulfills you.
I
mean, she was there and she
understand.
did both parts.
I understand what you're saying, but
Yeah.
I have found that people have said that to me before, that they miss their dad an awful lot.
As you get for a man probably as you get older, you know, maybe when you're 20 years old, that it's like the joke, that does not know much. But then when you get
I
in
will
your
get that.
60s, 70s, then all of a sudden dad was a saint. I mean, he goes, and then you start to, you know. But no, my mom, third grade education, she goes, I mean, we used to have, you know, στα ελληνικά. And she couldn't read, but she used to help me to read so I can write it, and so I can write the spelling right, you know. But she was there. My friends, I remember when I had a teacher, when I was really young, and I would forget, you know, simple words like La Fenêtre, La Porte, and she would remember, she would correct me, you know. I mean, she's very, very bright, even now, even now. I'm concerned now about her macular degeneration because it's hard when you get older and you lose your sight, you know. It's very hard. But
So how were you affected by? Do you recall how you were affected by the war taking place?
no, I was very young.
Yeah, you don't.
I was very
remember
young,
that?
and I don't remember really. The only thing that I remember, because we live in Petralona, and we're on the borderline of Petralona and Sicilio, and my family, my father's sisters, they lived in Sicilio. I remember my father coming, and again, I have very vague. In fact, now there are times I close my eyes and I want to bring my father's picture into my mind. I don't remember my father well, you know. And I used to remember when my father used to have a hard time when he was going, because in Sicilio they were the Hites, we call them, they were the rightists. And in Petrano they were the leftists. So you were passing the borderline. I remember my father coming and saying to my mother, I had to play a game, you know, because they would say TC, what, you know, yeah, with what side are you? And you didn't know if it was communist or they were on the other, you know. So I remember the Germans, you know, where Dora Strato, Filopapu, they used to take us, you know, because from Petralona to Filopapu, it's just, you know, walking distance. And we used to go with the maid that we had, and my mom, and my father's sister. We used to go there for us to play, you know, in the afternoon. And I remember the Germans giving us candies. And they were good with children. So I don't have bad things about. And I also remember vaguely when the Italians came, but they were with they had their, you know, yeah, I mean, it was, you know, and I remember like a parade down from Tris Hierarches, you know, because we were right on the back of the ecclesia, of the church of Tris Hierarches in Petralona. And I remember that it was like, they were coming like it was a parade, yeah, a festival. So I don't have no, you know, and also the other thing is we didn't stay in Athens. My grandfather, God rest his soul, he was such a great man. He, on my mother's side, he asked his children the sister who was in Pirea and us to leave the cities and go to Caristo. So there you didn't starve because my grandfather was a merchant in the merchant general store he had. So you could barter. They would bring chickens. He would give them wheat or whatever he had in the store, and also they were growing things in the farm. So the people that they were outside of the big cities, they didn't have no problems. And of course, the adults they made us feel that everything was okay. And now they tell me stories that I did when I was young. I told them, I guess the Germans, they were coming to check about the guns, and my papu had guns, and they're supposed to take them all in the platea, so my papu, they went and they buried them. So I was, I don't know, like 2.5, 3 years old, and I said, I know where my papu, because I was born 38, so I was just, a couple years old.
Yeah.
And I said, I know my papu where he has his dufeki, So they took me to another, little city, so I can be away from where, I go, so I will not open my big mouth and say anything to. But like I said, I don't have, that's why I didn't go through war. Now my mother could tell you.
You're
My
so
mother,
different.
I brought my mom here. She heard the ambulance going by. She thought that we were having a war
Oh,
because of the sirenes, of the
Yes.
sirens, So,
I don't know if my wife is finished or not. There's two things I might, touching on what we were just saying here, read to you. And it might be a good way to wrap this. It's up to you folks. I don't know how much more you want to do here. But at my dad's funeral, in fact, Father Evanthia asked me to give him copies of this, and I made an extra copy, and I'll give it to you if you want to. There were two things that I read at my dad's funeral, and this was one of them. And my son has read this at his church on Father's Day. It was grandfather's birthday. He was 79. He got up early, showered, combed his hair, and put on his Sunday's best so he could look nice when they came. He skipped his daily walk to the town cafe where he had a coffee with his cronies. He wanted to be home when they came. He put his porch chair on the sidewalk so he could get a better view of the street when they drove up to help celebrate his birthday. At noon he got tired, but decided to forego his nap so he could be there when they came. Most of the rest of the afternoon he spent near the telephone so he could answer it when they called. He has 5 married children, 13 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. 1 son and daughter live within 10 miles of his place. They hadn't visited him for a long time, but today was his birthday, and they were sure to come. At supper time, he left the cake untouched so they could cut it and have dessert with him. After supper, he sat on the porch waiting. At 8:30, he went to his room to prepare for bed. Before retiring, he left a note on the door which read, "Be sure to wake me up when they come." It was grandfather's birthday. He was 79.
So he passed away at his birthday?
No.
His children never came for his birthday.
and he was waiting the whole time.
How fathers mature. At 4 years old, my daddy can do anything.
Oh, you have heard this.
At 7 years, my dad knows a whole lot. At 9 years old, my dad doesn't quite know everything. At 12 years old, Dad just doesn't understand. At 14 years old, Dad is old-fashioned. At 21 years old, that man is out of touch. At 25 years old, Dad's okay. At 30 years old, I wonder what Dad thinks about this. At 35, I must get Dad's input first. At 50 years old, what would Dad have thought about that? And at 60 years old, I wish I could talk it over with Dad once more.
Yeah, that's very. Yeah, I haven't heard that.
You can have those if you'd like them. Records?
So, Do you want to tell us then why you wanted to leave Greece and come?
The main reason is, like I said to you earlier, it was that the opportunity for a young student who wanted to get educated in Greece, it was very difficult. There were very few openings, and like my one cousin, my first cousin, the admiral's son, he came to IIT, and he stayed after that. He stayed here like your brother, and it was very difficult. It will take you 2-3 years sometimes, and it will cost you quite a bit for Disteria, private tutoring, to be able to get into the university. And we didn't have. I had a brother that I wanted him to get educated, so I didn't. We didn't have the excess of money to be spending for tutoring for me. And when, in fact, after I thought about going into becoming now they call them flight attendants. We used to call them stewardess then. But then it was very glorified, and because you were traveling and everything. So I thought, if I'm not going to be a dentist, at least I will just fly, do something. But I was always very adventurous, and it was also when I went to see my father's brother, who was the lawyer. He took the Livanos company. Livanos, it is
Ship kind of,
yes, the ship owner,
Yeah.
because my father was with that boat when they killed him, and we had 12 years. My mother was running to the. If this had happened now or in the United States, I would have been a multimillionaire,
yeah.
But anyway, we got some money from that, and it was just very, very difficult for me to stay in Greece. But my father's brother, like I started to say, he was our what do you call it? Not custodian. Guardian. Thank you. And when I told him that I was my mom says, Eva started in her papers. I was 19 when I started.
Did your mom encourage you to?
Yes, because she believed me, And so when I told him, they used to live at Humeletiu, so now Humeleti. So and I was with my mom, and I remember right now we were in his apartment that they used to live, and he started, and he was a tall man and everything. And he says, "Trela thikate, you're crazy. Where is the girl going to go? You're letting your daughter, my mother." And so my aunt, his wife, who was a beautiful person, a beautiful lady, she says, "Are you willing to give her a dowry here?" And from the time that I was a baby, when I started to talk about, people that would say you get married and all this stuff, I said, there is no way that I'm going to give dowry to no man to marry me. So, I just had, yeah. So, but anyway, and against my uncle, I made a decision, and it was the best decision that I, could have made. And I was very lucky because I ended up with a wonderful man, and he has treated me just...
Thank you. She keeps referring to her father. Her father was killed. I don't know if she explained. Basically,
No, I didn't explain.
he developed a urinary problem.
He became dehydrated.
Yeah, and he was unable to urinate, and somebody who thought he had some training in
No,
first
sweetheart.
aid. It was a carpenter.
Yeah, but the captain put a gun on the carpenter and ordered him to catheterize my father.
Catheterize him.
And he killed him. He hemorrhaged to death. That was
And
it.
he was arrested. They put him in irons. They locked him up. But when the ship arrived in the nearest port, he jumped ship. So they have no idea where the guy is. And her father is buried in Egypt now.
Eden.
Eden. And nobody, only a friend of theirs who is a Kalogria, or a priest, has gone to see the grave.
There is a grave
There
with
is
my
a grave.
father's there.
Costa, her brother, has wanted so many times to go to see his father's
And to
grave.
bring the bones here, and my
Yeah.
mother says, no way, I don't want to see any of that, let the man rest where he is and everything.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, it just, no, in fact, the whole, it was mutiny on the boat, you know, the whole pleroma, you know, the whole, because they want to throw my father, the captain. Usually when somebody dies on a boat, see what had happened, he had stolen cargo, the captain. And that's why, because those days, it was right after the war, when my father started going back to work again, he didn't want to serve the Germans. So he didn't, you know, because they want all the engineers to work for them, and he never, because he said, I'm not going to be a traitor. But when, you know, the things they quiet down, then he got to the Livanos company, and it was a cargo. And the captain, when he was in one port, he stole, he had put some cargo that was not,
His.
yeah, and he wanted to take it to the specified port that he wouldn't, you know, have any trouble. So when they inquired and they asked the next boat about my father's condition, the doctor says, no problem, he's dehydrated, just stop him, because they were down by the equator. It was very, very hot. And they said, stop at the first port and hospitalize him, he will be fine. So then he put the carpenter with a gun, and there were 3 other men with accidents on the same trip. So it was, and he was 41 years old.
Yeah.
So it was a sad, you know, situation. So Michael has been wonderful, not only with me, but with my mom too. And my mom has been my nanny, she has been my confidant, she has been everything. We have traveled a lot with Michael, and I was able to just leave the kids and go to Paris and go to London and go to all these
And not
places
worry, yeah.
that I couldn't have done without.
Does your Bethel live with you? No.
No, she lives on her own. So who arranged for you to go to Montreal? What was your contact there?
It was, the contact was, at that time, the priest in Montreal. Through him, I was able to come. And they said they could put me in a school up there, but the plan was to just stay in Montreal, because my uncle and aunt here, that they lived in Berwyn, they promised that they were, you know, going to take care. And I came with my own expense and everything. It was not they were supporting me or helping me. But when they realized that he was in love with me, then they washed their hands. The wedding that you saw, the pictures, my father-in-law and mother-in-law, we had 550 people for sit-down reception. They put the wedding together. They paid for every bit of it.
Her
They
relatives
became my
didn't
parents.
pay a dime.
Yeah. And the only thing that I put my foot down, it was my wedding gown. It was only the time, I don't know, $250, $300. I put down because I felt they're my relatives. They told me to come, and that's the least that they can do. And my cousin, through my cousin's wife, she's supposed to be my, I have gone through a lot. She's supposed to be my maid of honor. The week before the wedding, she changed her mind.
Backs up.
And it was jealousy, you know.
Yeah.
And she said to me one day, because I was living in Berwyn too, and she said to me one day, Eva, do you know that Michael is going to be a doctor? I said, so? I said, big deal. And she says, how are you going to cope with all these people that he's going to be around with? And I says, listen, I mean, I grew up with a family that they were highly, highly educated. My mother has a 3rd grade education. No one put my mom down. Everybody respect her, and I says, and don't worry, I'll take care of things. So Michael was in school, I was going out with professors. I didn't care if I made mistakes. I still make mistakes with my English. I didn't care. I love the people, they love me, and it has been just a wonderful world. It's just, but it was jealousy, and even now, I see that with her. But it was really sad because they left me. I mean, my way of coming to the United States from Canada, it was somebody else. I mean, it was somebody could make a movie. You know, it was just terrible because I didn't have no support from the family that they promised.
Right.
Not support me, but to just be
Help
there
you,
for me.
to help
yeah,
you.
to be there for me.
Mhm.
So that's why I have been very close with Michael's family. I took care of his parents, you know, all along. And when they were sick, they were my parents. We were very lucky. We had a beautiful communication and, you know, a wonderful relationship. And with my mother-in-law, she's a tough cook even now. Not so much the poor thing. She's, you know, έχει καταβληθεί. But if it was something, we just, you know, say, Mom, you know, or she would say, Eva, and we'll just take care of things and no problem at all.
Good.
So,
Do you want to tell us anything more about the time since you've been here, or should we wrap things up?
Yeah,
Is there anything
want
else
to
you
add?
wanted to tell us?
Tell us anything specific? I don't know, it's kind of what else to ask.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I
Because we
don't,
kind of took it over because we talked a little bit before.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
So what would you consider?
Oh, the thing is that I have been frustrated myself. Yeah, you said before, you know, I started dance troupe, I have been doing the painting, but still in my life I want to be more creative as far as to have had a profession. This is something that I felt that I was
She
cheered
feels
up.
that she was denied an education.
Yeah, that was, even I mean, I'm self-taught in many ways, you know, but I feel that that's something that I would have liked in my life. I mean, if anybody says, do you feel that you were cheered from something? And I would say, yeah, because I've given everything for my family. And it's wonderful, but there are times that you say, you know,
What
I would like something for myself. Now, he has been just great because he has left me, maybe because also he wants to do his thing, he has let me grow in my own way. I have gone with my art classes as far as Hawaii. I have gone to Greece anytime they say, he's never said, don't go. With my international, I've gone from Istanbul by myself to Taiwan, you know. So I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky, you know. So, and my daughter reminds me that. She says, I wish that I was not a dentist, but I had Eva's life. So you know, in that respect,
She says she's frustrated, and I understand where she's coming from because I did deny her or deprive her of the opportunity to get an education. When we first got married, I was in school. And our first year, as I said earlier in the tape, she worked at Marshall Fields in the Field of Fire section, and then she, of course, became pregnant, which again created a situation where it would be difficult for me going to school and her to be trying to hold a job down and be pregnant, and then with the coming of Alina, our first child, etc. So she did miss that opportunity, and I do have some regrets about that. I really do. I sometimes am sorry that I didn't try to somehow or another provide an opportunity for her to get an education. But by the same token, when we were filling out some papers, we were at some office the other day and we were filling out some papers, and she said, here, you fill them out faster for me, and it came to her occupation. So I wrote down the typical thing you always write, housewife. But she's not a housewife because, like I said, look at the paintings that she has done. She teaches cooking classes, considered to be a real authority on phyllo dough. She teaches crafts down there. There are things, I'm trying to think, there was a couple things sitting around. Those baskets right behind you there. She teaches you how to make those out of...
that's from pine needles.
From pine needles. Those
You can
whatever,
bring
you
it
can
on.
pick them up. Sikoseta que
Nella free, yeah.
Yeah, they're very light. Just pick the whole thing up and bring it over here. I mean, it's something.
Those are from pine needles.
Here. Do you want- how's that?
Oh no, it's too close.
But she teaches craft classes
No,
like
leave it
that.
there, leave it.
She has taught that class on how to make stationery out of pressed flowers. So to say she's an artist, she's also a seamstress,
These
and
are the
she's,
same thing too.
as she has
See,
shown.
and this, you know what pine needles are?
Yes.
Alright, these are from pine needles. That's the cover of that.
Wow.
It's like the Indians. That's an art that the Indians used
That's
to
very
do.
difficult. Yes.
Yeah. No, I'm very
Artistic.
artistic.
And
Yeah.
she teaches those classes.
And I'm thankful to God for that, because otherwise I would have been very bored to death.
So how do you say she's a housewife when she's an artist, she's a seamstress, she has sewn costumes, she has made suits, she's worked with ultra suede
I
fabrics
used to
and
make
stuff
all
like
my
that.
suits, all
Yeah.
my clothes, my hats.
And a seamstress, an artist, a craftsman, a culinary expert, and all that. So I feel funny writing down housewife. You know, I'd like to say, no, she's an artist. She's an authority on Greek.
I am
food and
very
Greek cooking.
thankful to God that I have a husband like Michael. That he's let me grow, because sometimes you're married and you don't grow on your own. And that's what Father Michael, when he blesses the couples, when they get married, he says that you came as two individuals, and you're going to live together, but you still try to keep, each one of you, your individual,
Identity, yeah.
your identity, because that I think that it's very important. It is a holy thing that as a human being you have.
Sure. So how did you learn all of these
Yeah.
different talents?
Just being I'm very good with my hands. I cut now my own hair. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that God
That's
has given me,
gift
this
like that.
type of,
This talent.
Yeah, and
Yes,
I
for,
started with this. Excuse me, honey. I started with the sewing when I was expecting Alina, and I would make. At that time, it was like now, like this, the A-line of pregnancy dresses. So I saw, and like I told you before, what my teacher had said, there is nothing that you cannot do if you want to. And his sister and mother, they used to sew. His sister better than his mom. And she used to make some suits and stuff, and I thought, but she took lessons when she was in high school. And then I thought to myself, if Georgiana can do it, why? So I started with simple things, and then I became more interested, and I was capable of doing it, because you can try, but sometimes you
You're not good at it,
cannot
right,
do it,
right.
Like my daughter, she's very artistic, she can do some things, but she doesn't have the patience for, and that also, if you're going to do things like that, you have to be, very patient, and with the sewing and everything, you are prepared to take things apart. I design my own. I cannot follow a book in knitting, but I can design. I can see what you're wearing, and I can sit down and copy your sweater. I've done it for myself. I've done never for Michael. He's still waiting for a sweater for himself, but he has so many that I'm not going to worry about it. But for the girls, I've made beautiful. It's like $300, $400 sweaters that I have made if you go out to buy them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, things that, God has given me that kind of a talent to be able to do it.
in cooking and in sewing and in crafts, no formal education, learn herself through trial and error and experimentation and talent. The painting, a lot of that,
I've taken
again,
lessons.
talent, but she also has taken many lessons
Yeah,
up here
yeah.
and in Florida, and now she's talking about when she goes back in January again, she's going to take some more classes
Yeah,
from
and
a
I
particular
belong to the
artist.
art league down there.
Right.
And also, I used to paint when I was in high school, but then not with oil and stuff, with a pencil. Do a lot of
Drawings.
yeah. And in fact, I had done. I cannot remember now. One of the musicians. I cannot remember. Again, the same teacher. She thought I had copied it from someplace, and she made me to sit down and do it in front of her, to do and she believed, the same teacher, she was just unbelievable with us girls. But we used to wear the little, colors and, it was just awful.
People say to me or ask me all the time, you and your wife don't live together for 6-7 months of the year. I says, no, we don't. It has an ominous tone to it.
6 months, don't
Or
put
6
7.
months. Yeah, but you somehow or another always squeeze another month here or there. You're gone for 2 weeks here or 2 weeks there. But anyway, and I say to him, are you kidding? Many times I can't find her at home. Eva also probably did mention that she plays tennis 5 days a week.
Oh, yeah.
And on a scale of a ranking of 4, she's a 3.5 tennis player. So she plays tennis 5 days a week. She's very active in the Philoptochos at St. Catherine's down there. She's very active in the International Women's Club of Florida, where she's gone to Taiwan, Istanbul, Washington, D.C. the other day. And she also teaches, as I said, all these classes and crafts and does painting and stuff like that. So is she sitting around the house staring out the window? No. No. If I
But
ever
also,
want to
whatever
find
I
her,
have done, it's not making money.
no.
You know,
Darn
like
it.
all these people.
Go out there and get a job, kid, and make some money.
So whatever I have done, it is more for a volunteer, like
For service,
example,
yeah.
for service. But it's very rewarding, you know, in some ways.
She runs the Lukumades booth at the
Oh
festival
yeah,
down
I'm
there.
crazy. 3 years ago down at St. Catherine's, they didn't have no Lukumades person, and I had helped before the gentleman who was running it. So I said, how can you have the festival without Lukumades? So when I said that, they said, can you take over? I says, no, I have never done it, and that's a big job. That's a huge job.
Oh.
So and they says, oh yes, you can do it. You can. I says, no, I cannot do it. So another gal, she says, if you take over, I'll help you. So 3 years now, I'm making Lukumades, and I'm the one. My friends, all the Americani, they
And
come.
you've got that special recipe
And they
too.
say, you don't work at the festival, do you? We didn't see you at the festival. And I said, no, because I'm in my coffee hall mixing the dough, you know. This year we made $9,000
Katara, net.
from Lukumades.
Just the Lukumades booth, $9,000 net.
Yeah.
Net. That's a lot of Lukumades.
You should ask for a commission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would you consider to be your biggest accomplishments in your life so far?
I think, first of all, my family, my 3 children. That is my biggest accomplishment.
Here, here.
And then
Absolutely.
the next thing is when I watch my kids, my grandkids, from my dancers now. To have those kids with the respect that they come up to me, I mean, that has been very rewarding. It has been just wonderful to look back and say, I did something, to touch the lives of these young people. That's the sewing and all the other stuff. It's a pleasure that I get from myself.
Right.
But I feel this is something that I feel like I have contributed to society, just a tiny, tiny bit of good.
There was, this is a good number of years ago when Eva was still up here and we were at our festival, and Eva and I always have danced at the end of the line. And we were dancing in, I don't know, a Kalamateno or something like that. And we were dancing in, and as we got into the door,
We're the last ones.
the circle of dancers had come all the way around the dance floor, and we were overlapping it. And I started to get tears in my eyes, and it made the hair on my neck stand up, and I said to myself, oh my God, look at, there must have been 30, 40 dancers out there dancing on the dance floor. And
Or more.
yeah, and it was a very emotional moment. And
The
there was
only
something
thing
else I was
is
saying,
that I
forgot.
started something that now I opened Pandora's box,
Yeah.
and he has been so involved with that sometimes
Yeah.
I get upset with him because I feel that there are times that you just have to say enough is enough,
Yeah.
and he's getting better with that now.
I write an article period. I'm guilty of not getting it in on time all the time, but we have our church bulletin. It's called The Champion. It comes out, and the last issue, not the one that just came yesterday, the one before, I wrote something about the festival, throwing out kudos, and I made a statement in one paragraph there, which is very true. I come home from the festival tired, knowing that the next morning I gotta get up and head out to the fairgrounds again, but I sit up sometimes till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, watching the videotape and critiquing a little bit. And Sunday
Our
night,
age now. Huh?
yeah, Sunday night, it was all over. I had lost my voice, because besides announcing for the dance, I'm also the MC, talking about the raffle, get the raffle, there's cooking classes going on back there and all that. And my voice was gone. And I got home about, about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. My son Gregory stayed there till 3 o'clock in the morning helping clean up. And then the next morning, after a few hours of sleep, he was back there again. And I said in this news announcement that I came home and I sat up till 2:30 in the morning watching the videotape, and I sat there crying like a baby because I was watching the kids performing and doing their thing and dancing and with kefi and chara, and at the end giving a hug and a kiss to everybody. And God, does that make you feel good? Something else. And something that Father Peter didn't realize until his first festival here with us, when we called him back to the dressing room. We have never performed, ever, at our festival or Opuke Napame, any place we go, without first a Patrimon.
I
We
started
always
from the first
say
day
a prosif
or a
hi.
prosif heel of some sort.
If sometimes we'll say it in Greek, sometimes we'll say it in English. We have never gone on to dance at a performance, whether it's a wedding or some festival or Opuke Naine, without first we all gather together and hold hands and we say a prosif hi. And then we say, okay boys, break a leg, get out there and dance.
Oh, that's nice.
And what advice would you have for people that are seeing this video to give?
What do you mean as far as advice?
Something.
Advice to the new generation.
You didn't hear the advice I gave when you were inside cooking.
No, I didn't. To try to keep, first of all, our faith strong. That is, I'm very proud that my family has stayed with that, because, with circumstances nowadays, sometimes you don't have that a blessing and privilege. And I feel that has been a great, great blessing in our family to have Orthodoxy continuing. And as far as I hope that we can keep not to become. I love the melting pot that exists in the United States, in Chicago mainly, and for us to keep our identity as Greeks. And I'm very proud. There are times that I feel that it's so wonderful. We're so blessed to be born into the race that we're born, and as far as advice, I hope that the next, the generation now, the future generation, they just, keep clean from all the stuff that it's out there, and also that, they continue their fathers and mothers' desires.
Remember
and,
their heritage.
Yeah, and
Traditions and what their forefathers did
Yeah.
for them.
And take that advice.
Okay, thank you.
great.
So let's start with
I'll show you
Dr. Kontos. Where
Well, my father,
your papu, Kalamata.
all right, we'll start with my grandfather. My grandfather came from Kalamata in Peloponnesos, Greece. My grandmother, his wife, unfortunately on this map it doesn't show it, it would be over in Asia Minor, in Najli, someplace over in this area off the map. My mother, as I said, was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My dad was from Levidi, right outside of Tripoli, right about here, just north of Tripoli. In fact, lots of times I joke with people who are from Tripoli that Tripoli is a suburb of Levidi. And of course, Eva, my wife, was born in Piraeus and grew up in Athens. And that's about it as far as my family is concerned, except that we know that my great-grandfather on my father's side,
On your mother's side.
on my father's side,
On your mother's side.
on my mother's side, I'm sorry, came from Crete, from the island of Crete.
And they went
And they
to Asia Minor.
immigrated to Asia Minor
That
from
it's
there.
not too far. Nazli, I went there when I went to Turkey 4 years ago, And in fact, I have some dirt that I brought from the village. And it is not too far from Ephesus. It's a small village now. Now, my family, my mother came from Karisto. Where are we?
Right there.
Yeah, Karisto's here. And my
But
grandfather
that's on the island of Evia.
of island of Evia. It's the biggest island, and next or Crete after Crete is the biggest island, and then my papu also came from Evia too. It is a smaller village, but he was raised in Athens, and my grandmother she came from one of the outskirts of Karistos. So they were all, you know, on my mother's side, they all came from Evia. As far as, you know, we know, all my ancestors, they came from that area. My grandmother, on my father's side, came from Asia Minor, from Constantinople, Istanbul, that is this way, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And then they had moved to Chios, that
Chios is down here.
Chios down here, and my papu, my father's father was from Ios, but they met in Chios. They got married in Chios, and then they moved to Piraeus, and that's where they lived till, you know, both my grandfather and grandmother died.
Okay.
Okay? Is my mother's wedding, my mother's and father's wedding. Is it too much glare?
No, it's fine.
My mother's and father's wedding, and
No, that's fine. That's fine.
I thought there was at one time which I can't find
yeah,
it.
probably it's. And this is a picture of at my brother's wedding. This is my brother at his wedding, and this is my mom watching us. It's a pretty picture, you know. She's watching the two children dancing, and it was at his wedding. And unfortunately, my husband, I don't know why they rushed. There was no problem, but my brother got married when Michael was still in Okinawa.
And what year were your parents born?
My mom was 1913, was born, and my dad 1904.
Okay. And what year did they get married?
They got married 1936,
The year I was born.
and I was born 1938.
Okay.
Yes.
We got married July 5th, 1959 at All Saints Greek Orthodox Church in Joliet, Illinois. And that was our wedding picture taken in front of the Kontos.
Upstairs in our bedroom.
Oh, that's-
No, that's
That's
this
fine.
one there. It was upstairs.
Okay. Unfortunately, we don't have any pictures that they took place during the ceremony, but because the priest wouldn't allow. So
The
all
priest
all
prohibited any
All
photographs.
these pictures, they're, you know,
Posed.
posed
Yep.
after.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
So
And what do we have here?
this is when I was 14 months old. My mother took. Yeah, bring the big one. Michael's bringing it. Michael.
Which big one?
The one, it's in the kitchen, I think, honey. Of me and my dad. My mom took me to the photographer, and she dressed me up as a vlacha, and she took me to the photography in Piraeus, and had me, you know, pose, and they took the picture. But she had an ulterior motive, because we have a picture of my father the same size, and my grandmother told her that he was 14 months old too. So she took both pictures to the photographer, and he did at the time trick photography. We're talking about like 65 years ago. Trick photography, and made us look like we were, you know, brother and sister. It's me and my father.
So cute.
Yeah, very nice.
This is a
Okay,
picture.
let's go move
You've
to-
already done this before, but that was a picture of me taken when, gosh, I must have been about 5, 6 years old.
Do you know where's the place?
It was in Aurora,
Okay.
here in Aurora, in a home that we were living in on the east side of Aurora. But this is before my mom and dad built the home that I lived in for 30 years.
So that's like a little Evson costume?
Yes, a little fustanella.
Oh, that's nice. And let's move into some other pictures.
Well, this would be
Now,
just,
this is trick photography on my part, but I have cut pictures, and they're not all my grandchildren, but this is Ariana, and then there's Matthew and Timothy in different poses.
Oh, I
And I
see.
put them together, you know? Yeah. But I have made, look at her, I have made her little outfit like an Epirotisa. You know, with her little black, that I have embroidered and everything.
Nice.
And the boys, they had them and they have been playing with them, so it has served its purpose.
Okay.
well, this is just a picture of me again in my
How
youth.
old are you? Nothing?
Oh gosh, I must have been about 12, 13 years old
This
there,
was for the Michael's wedding.
somewhere around there.
Yes,
And
it's very pretty.
this
Now,
is
this
a
dress,
picture
I
here
designed.
of me when I was
I brought the material, it's all
a very,
sequins
very
and embroidered.
small child.
Baby.
Yeah, a baby.
Okay,
It is
that's
right.
nice.
London. And and it was like a week
I don't
before
care. There's
the wedding
Yeah.
almost.
Okay.
I was
More
so
in there.
nervous because I couldn't make up my mind how I went.